Welcome to the What If We Could show, where every week we ask that burning question around new topics in artificial intelligence and tech alpha. I'm today's host, Kelvin, and I've got with me Bob and Kevin. And today we're going to talk about how Etsy launches a new gift mode, Lumiere, a new space-time diffusion text-to-video model by Google, how AI helps to identify deadly pancreatic cancer, how 11 Labs raised 80 million Series B, and Neuralink begins human tests. So let's get started.
Let's do it. Hey, everybody.
Right. Hey.
Where do you want to start?
Cool. So
Let's start.
Etsy launches new gift mode. Kevin, you want to kick us off here?
Yeah, I thought this one was really interesting. Etsy launching the new GIF mode, touting it being AI powered. I think it's got a lot of really great leverage based on my understanding of using AI LLMs to accomplish this. Over 200 different personas to be able to say, hey, I'm going to answer a few different questions about giving a gift to somebody and who is it, what do they like, and it's going to come back with some different recommendations. They said 200 different personas that they've put together. Whenever I hear that and start hearing limiting numbers, I think there's a little more deterministic heuristic rules than there is AI that explores much more niche facets. But to apply AI to go through 100 million different products that they have on their storefront, right, I think is a really great use of artificial intelligence to even make this possible, going through all those products and saying what is giftable and what types of people would like what types of gifts. So I'll start there. I think it's pretty cool to see also tactical implementation of AI for revenue generation by a company, right? This isn't cost savings. This isn't question and answer. You are answering questions, but you're ultimately getting to an outcome. And Etsy is looking to get to more dollars.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of like what's old is new, though this isn't that old. Back in our enterprise MarTech days, we used to call it guided selling, better, simpler is just personalized product recommendations, but moving from, sort of static data driven products that might match to asking folks like who is the recipient of the gift or who are you if you're going through your own buying process. Those tools have been around for, I'd say, 10 years or so, AI powered, so machine learning powered, I should say. And is this really an example of sort of reinvigorating tried and true methods with AI to take it to a whole nother level? Guided selling with AI, well, in my opinion, I think is the way to sell stuff moving forward, right? Try to get as laser targeted of a lens of an understanding around a person, and you have a wide swath of services and products to offer them in a catalog. You can make way better and targeted recommendations to that person that not just map to the features of the product you're looking for, but maybe lifestyle of the person, which has always sort of been a nirvana goal for marketers.
And I'm really curious how they did it. I mean, in some of the articles that I read, they talked about it being a collaboration with GPT-4, and that they said they used a combination of machine learning, human creation, and OpenAI's GPT-4. I mean, it's fascinating in general, right? The retail sector is so ripe for doing that. And like you said, Bob, they've tried to do that using heuristic models for, as long as commerce exists, well, specifically, in e-commerce. And it's kind of interesting. It is in before that age of AI, it has never really taken hold. I think there's been a lot of attempts to fully personalize it, but it has always stopped short a little bit. Where do you guys see sort of the effect of having, here machine learning and language models getting into that? How do you guys think that they'll actively use it? Where will they unlock the value here as opposed to using a simple heuristic model?
My mind goes to routing, like even in the old world of guided selling with XGBoost and other machine learning models behind it, ultimately that's like advanced form of routing. Everything's sort of known. Like, what path should we send this person down to get to that state, that conversion? And I think that's starkly different than what we're looking at here with AI, specifically generative, right? So that they have 200 personas, that doesn't mean there's only 200 outcomes. There's probably an infinite quantity of outcomes here. They're just sort of tailoring this around 200 known personas, which is a lot of personas when you think about it. So that's where my mind goes, is just sort of like path is more goal seeking, path finding in essence than path selection, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess it's interesting with the 200 personas, right? So I'm curious where in the process do they use the GPT, right? So do they use it to attach you to a certain persona? So kind of mapping, they have predefined the personas and have predefined the mapping of the personas to sort of the product recommendations or the gift recommendations, and then they're using the LLM part to attach you to a specific persona. Is that where they're using it?
I think it's unclear. Yeah, I'm not
Mhm.
I'm not sure. At the very least, it does feel like a bit of a miss slash a growth opportunity, as you're calling out, Bob. To it's still 200 personas is way better than, are you trying to buy a gift for a wedding or a birthday, right? Like a couple options, Father's Day, the classic marketing calendar, as it's known. It still leaves, from my perspective, as I start thinking about navigating to product recommendations, something to be desired for finding like the power of using an LLM to find niches within that. So one of those 200 personas, or a few of them, have to be something around gamer, right? Something along the lines of likes gaming. That's okay. As someone that likes gaming, and anybody that spends the time around the ecosystem knows there's a lot of niches within that. And to be able to better identify what those niches are without putting too much burden on the person answering questions and doing the shopping, that's the balance here. You can get a lot further in the niche of matching up what, out of those 100 million products on Etsy, which ones are the second tier down under gaming, that would be a home run of receiving it, right? So we've all gotten a gift of, hey, you're a sports fan, here's a sports gift, like, oh, thanks, right? That one's a little bit easier because you start doing affinity with teams. It's a and so you can be a little bit more broad with some other types of categories, and still hit it. But man, to deliver something with minimal questions to the gift giver that just feels like, I know you, I picked this out for you, here you go, that would be the magic, I think, of trying to apply LLMs here.
I was going to pick this thing, but because you said this other thing, it's actually it's this product instead, right? Mm-hmm. It all boils down to like that magic word, right? Which is inference. I think people skip over that keyword when you think about AI. It's literally the motion of AI doing its thing. It's doing inference. Inference is powerful, right? That's the value of the human, is that we're able to bridge the chasm and infer things that aren't directly connected digitally. And so, that's sort of my mind goes in terms of the value here, is doing that at scale.
Yeah. I think an even better if here, as I started thinking about this gifting product under Etsy, would be, what if I could curate 5 to 10 gifts really quickly from this process that are very close to within the realm of the bullseye of the target of giving a really great gift to somebody. And then I fund my Etsy gifting wallet. So lock up my money and say, hey, I'm willing to give $25. The products that are curated are around $25 already, and right on target. And then I send Bob a hey, great, pick out your gift. Here it is. Here's some things I thought you'd like, but grab the one that you really want. And so now you get the best of both worlds. You get to be thoughtful. The money's committed, so Bob doesn't feel bad. It's like, it's this gift is happening, and you're able to choose what you want without having to return it to then ultimately get what you want. And this could be the place where, Calvin, that next level down of LLMs applied, where, well, now Bob's driving. Bob knows Bob. Bob clicks into one of the 5 gifts, and then it's okay, you can have that. Or do you want me to expand that tier down and say, here's the other 10 things that you are probably interested in, from just that one piece of information missing, to go a click deeper. And it sounds like product recommendations. It sounds like stuff we've been doing forever, but I think it's like vastly. I think it's a lot different. There's a slight tweak in the interface there that would make it just dramatically different and more personalized, and make Bob light up that I spent $25 on him.
Not the first time. Kevin buys me stuff all the time. I got an awesome coffee mug, and I've got a Beeple coffee table book that I'm looking at right now. Thank you.
It's the best thing you can spend your money on, making other people smile.
For sure. Speaking of inference, have you guys seen sort of the new text to video model that Google has brought out? Have you looked into Lumiere? I think Bob, you mentioned it a bit before. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, I skimmed the paper. Couldn't talk technically into how they do it, but the thing I'm excited about is, according to the paper, is that long running video being generated, but it's all one shot, which is a departure from typical approach of like frame by frame. That to me seems interesting, both from like horsepower infrastructure, but also I think continuity. I'd love to see a output in like a week or two with this, once an implementation's there on like a Hugging Face to try out. And I have a suspicion that's going to be a higher quality than some of the like hallucinatory videos that we've seen over the last few months. They're absolutely getting better across the board. And they were already before this, which is the third point of excitement, which is, okay, Google says we've got something better. Can't wait to see what those outputs can mean, like today, and then, moving forward, maybe a year from now, what those could be and how fast they could potentially generate themselves. What do you think?
It's fascinating. It's fascinating, first of all, seeing how the incumbents are starting to catch up and ramping up in terms of how they catch up, right? Like if we we've been following Runway for a while, Pika obviously as well, right? All of the new kids on the block that have made great strides, and it's been quiet from Google, at least on the video front, for a while, and now suddenly we have this new research model coming out, giving us seemingly very good results. And speaking of the model, looking into it a little bit deeper, like what I think is interesting in terms of how, and also without going too deep into the technical details of it, but so far we have generate keyframes and fill in the gap, right? A lot of video generation has been about sort of inferring an interpolation between frames, right? And sort of adding in the gaps to create motion. So basically trying to get from consistent frame to frame by interpolating in between. What's very interesting in sort of the space-time unit architecture that they're trying to do, and that's what you tapped on before, is they're essentially trying to produce the entire video in one pass, right? So basically that's how they want to ensure temporal consistency. So in sort of the approach that Google is taking, it's a little bit more like 3D mapping the space, if that makes sense, right? So they're basically trying to predict how the elements in a scene would change and looking at them a little bit more as 3D objects in a scene. And that way they can kind of produce the entire pass or the scene without having to go frame interpolation. And I'm personally, like I said, we've only seen what Google has shown us so far, which is obviously highly hand-picked examples or cherry-picked examples, right? But the approach sounds like an interesting way to combine, spatial information with temporal information, and get sort of a visually and temporally coherent outcome. So interesting to see where that whole sort of space diffusion model is going to go to. But the results look very promising. So curious to see how Google follows up. What do you guys think about sort of the incumbent play, and how does Google get there now in comparison?
Yeah, I wanted to come back to that. You can't sleep on the incumbents. They are slower to do product marketing and release because there's more to lose for the teams that are driving this forward. There's credibility both for the company, for stature of the employees that are driving it forward, but they didn't just wake up and see Pika Labs and go, oh man, we need to get on this video generation. These are skunkworks projects inside these organizations, oftentimes way before the startups launched the productized version, right? Google wrote the paper on GPTs. Let's not forget that. OpenAI would not be where it's at even if Google didn't just publish the paper and say, here's the secrets to changing the world with LLMs. So I think they have a lot more aces up their sleeve. It's really a matter of, can they productize it in fast enough in a way that's going to make a difference. And also don't forget that if it doesn't work, Google and incumbents kill things. And so tools go away, which is fine. And it's okay for their business as well. It doesn't mean they won't take another crack at it. But they could launch something and it could be around for a little bit, and then it could just, get the sunset email and say, hey, this isn't really working out for us. It's gone. So I'm saying that as a don't over-index on incumbents either, that there's not room for Pika Labs and others to sustain over the long haul.
Yeah, my mind goes to consolidation, right? And this has been a theory of mine for a couple months now, considering the age of AI being upon us, right? I just think it's consolidation all the way up from here. Partly because, AI presents a situation where, previously entrepreneurs get in a room and they have a new novel concept and it sort of comes with a moat, right? Your first mover advantage, some sort of novel breakthrough or academic unlock that you're taking to market. And now in the world of AI, the moat is very shallow, if there at all. It might look more like a row of hedges or something in your yard instead of a dugout moat around your home or your castle in this analogy. And I think what we'll likely see is just M&As going absolutely bonkers. It's a resource problem when you get down to it, right? Can we solve big, hairy problems was always the name of the game. Now it's, can we solve big, hairy problems really fast before somebody else does? And can we monetize it before it becomes commoditized and just trivial to replicate, and hence the no moat concept. And so what I think we'll see with a high degree of probability is any new startup with something novel is going to get merged, right? Acquired up into the incumbents. And I think those incumbents just get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. The Microsofts, the Googles, the Salesforce, the Amazons et al. Just start bursting at the seams. And that's their primary growth driver, is acquisition of novel new unlocks, specifically using AI that we couldn't do before, versus having to do R&D and the product dev themselves.
Yeah, and it's not even just about solving the problems quickly and having the teammates and staffing resources. It's compute, right? The amount of compute to train to take that next swag at the next model that stays ahead is arguably as big of a barrier as the ability and knowledge from teammates to be able to, I'll call it equal parts right now. It's, to give credit to the humans, it's probably more weighted towards compute than it is to the very smart humans that work at these startups, and who has more compute and resources to buy compute than the big dogs, right? So yeah, that's another reason for that consolidation to happen. We've also heard rumors of it in what we'd consider some early stage startups that have had breakout success and traction that are still going great, but I'm burning $10 million a month on compute and I got to find more cash or a home by the end of the year, right? The perils of being successful in AI is the bills get big fast.
Yeah,
that's
and
right.
We've seen this tail, and that's, I think, why your acquisition strategy is probably, or theory is spot on, Bob. Is it's at some point you gotta merge into someone with bigger coffers, right? and like the incumbents just have large swaths of coffers at their disposal to even just keep running these models for a bit more. I mean, I'm still curious to see though when we'll reach the point of this needing to get to a point like, you know, in the case of Google, we've seen this turn out repeatedly in the past, right? Where they kill anything that's below a 100 million revenue threshold, you know, because it's just not relevant to them. And so if you look at AI currently, I mean, it's still a big question as to when will that compute get to a, like the excess of compute on the one side that you're using versus, you know, the value that you create on the other side actually get to a level where we see something matching. And just to give another side, right, I find it really interesting how, and I mean, that might be more tied to the current lawsuits and things like that on the OpenAI side, right? But I don't know if you've noticed the same thing, but GPT in its capacity, GPT-4 has been reduced massively when you're trying to interact with it. And that is us being heavy users still, right? We're also heavy API users. But if you look at the pure interface, in terms of what it gives back to you has been reduced quite drastically, right? That could also be because it, you know, maybe it's worth reducing, you know, the heavy load that it needs to do something and reduce costs, right? So we're still in that game where we don't know where this is going to land, in
I hope it wasn't
you know,
spreadsheet
profitable
driven.
land.
I hope it wasn't spreadsheet driven because I could see that type of decision being made like, oh, we can reduce our costs by making the output worse and we would increase our revenue because people are going to use it more to refine it. We get 2x the
Right.
lift on utilization and cut costs in half. Like if you presented that to the board, they'd say, yeah, let's do that.
Businesses
Right.
do that all the
I mean,
time.
we're obviously hypothesizing,
Reduce
but very, yeah.
reduce service quality by a acceptable percent and dramatically reduce cost. Companies do that all the time. Why not a tech company delivering infrastructure services? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now look at like, I think Google and Microsoft stand alone to me, right? Because they are big incumbents with unlimited war chest, but they're also model providers. Microsoft by way of OpenAI, but Google directly, and infrastructure providers, to your point. And I think another just last thought on the acquisition side is really what they're able to do now that they haven't before is they can mitigate the risk on new product development. So if AI is accessible to all, and it's sort of trivial to reconcile and sort of run it with a lot of these hosted services, that means when papers like the Lumiere, like we just talked about, drop, it's not one startup going after it. There's probably 30 as in the last 24 hours that have sprung up to go after implementation to monetize that. Now, as Google, we can just sit back, release new novel approaches to things, and let startups and competition in the market decide who's going to emerge from that soup and go acquire that one. We're already at $100 million business. We had no skin in the game, no risk, and we used evolution essentially, like survival of the fittest. Whoever emerges from this subcat is going to be a part of Google. And all the while they're monetizing both sides of the equation, right? Because they're the infra and the model provider likely.
Great example. I mean, if you look at Alpha Codium, I don't know if you've seen the news around that, and it being sort of the open source follow on Google DeepMind's Alpha Code, right? It's basically an open source version of it, right? And just surpassing Google, you know, and like who's to say that this is going to be sort of, you know, reincorporated in the right ways. So there's definitely a chance we will see this happen more often. Speaking of, you know, great new things though, and like maybe to try and get this a little bit on the positive impact side of it all, on the AI spectrum, I think one paper or one research that I found particularly interesting this week was is called PRISM. So it's basically a risk prediction system to help catch deadly pancreatic cancer earlier. And there was it was released also on the MIT Technology Review, and it's fascinating. Like, just to give a couple of the stats that I found really interesting about it is, one, it's a larger scale study. So they included indicators from 1.5 million individuals. So that, for one, I find highly interesting. because now we're getting to a state, and that used to be before the AI hype of the last 2 years. Getting good quality base data in health was very challenging. With the new AI hype, we see a lot more opening up across the science community for this to happen. And they actually managed to predict the likelihood of someone developing pancreatic cancer within 6 to 18 month window before any clinical diagnosis was made. So just think about that, right? So it's up to 18 months earlier than any clinical diagnosis. And so I think this is where we're really starting to see incredible unlocks. And they used a combination of statistical and machine learning techniques. So they built 2 models, one neural network and one LR, to do that. And the outcomes are just significant. So I think that's one great leap forward, and I'd love to see more of these coming in the future.
Yeah, that one's really exciting. AI is uniquely suited to do things like early intervention faster than humans, right? We had a bottleneck problem with people. We only got 2 eyes. And like a lab only has a certain number of people with heads that have those 2 eyes, and so you're limited in terms of labs coming through to test and analyze. And here we can do that at scale. That's exciting. And I know pancreatic cancer affects a lot of families around the world and is a very, very deadly cancer. So 6 to 18 months ahead is literally, that's probably one of the most exciting things I've heard since we've been on this journey on the AI side. That's profound.
Yeah, and just this week, I overheard a conversation with fairly well-known clinical researcher and doctor in the medical field. I'm not going to name names here, but it was very interesting. And he basically came back from a symposium. Yeah, came back from a symposium, and he was just flabbergasted, right? His opinion was basically said we're done, because he listened to an entire podcast where not a podcast, sorry, a symposium at the conference that he was at, and it was about how the whole diagnostic spectrum in most areas already, through using LLMs, covers 80% of any diagnosis that they can potentially do. And he was just seeing that, how it starts to impact it, that scene is just insane.
So he said we're done. What was that, like a negative thought, like, oh man, I'm not going to have a job anymore, or we're done in terms of like having to deal with diseases and things that are now like fixable?
Well, I think in their case specifically, affecting also their entire research department and diagnostics department. So I guess it was both ways. Like they're very deep into sort of trying to get AI into their entire research program. So it's a very interesting thing to see, right? So they're definitely interested in exploring that. But it's definitely a mixed bag of feelings. You could tell, there's both. There's the fear and the excitement of what this can do. And with research results such as what we're seeing here with PRISM, this is just underlying the fact that we are there now, right? This is not some hypothetical future, but we are at a point where it is objectively, at large scale studies, getting better than a human to predict these things.
Sheesh, that happened really fast. There were so many people telling me to not worry about this, and it's going to take 5 to 10 years. I said, not this time. And here we are.
Just literal life-changing improvements compounding on a weekly basis. It's really, we will only be able to connect it looking back, and even just using the last year and what the humanity already knows that they don't know, like way past can we chat with chat GPT and LLMs. These are the sleeper things that it's like, here's another headline, oh, by the way, we discovered this out in deep space that we didn't see before. These are and each one of these fields is massive compounding improvements, and it's hard to see it through the daily lens of, oh yeah, that's another one, put another one on the shelf.
So
5 and 10 years, where are we going to be at in 5 and 10 years, Bob? Bonkers.
we'll be in the basement with our VR goggles on, sitting on a beach. Probably. I don't know.
That sounds nice.
So,
I
so
saw an
what
article
beach
about
are
a
you gonna
breakthrough
pick?
on concrete, actually, just again using AI. They've now discovered a new form of concrete that's like stronger than steel. Oh, and by the way, here's a million new proteins we didn't know about before. I clicked the button, and now we have like a million new proteins. Like, holy crap! Oh my god!
Yeah, we are so not ready at tinkering this. I saw this sentence the other day where it was, you know, we are humanity in general is the very best at just childlike stumbling into complexities and toying with things that they don't yet know how to deal with. And that is such a good description of what humanity is. We're literally toddlers playing in the sand with this massive tool called AI and seeing how things go. But things like what we've seen here with PRISM, we can see that there is, great use and potential. I'm glad it's just being put to use
You can take the
a
man out the
positive way.
cave, but you can't take the cave out of the man.
That's fair. In other news, more in terms of like support, we've got some exciting new things around sort of AI voice technology too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One I wanted to share. I think I'm a big fan of 11 Labs. They have really great for what they do is create audio clones and synthetic voices for people to be able to use in whatever content that they need. And I've used it a few different times on a couple of different projects and things that we've done. And it gets the job done really good. I've cloned my own voice using it. And I remember the four of us partners were at an offsite, and I played this video where I was doing the voiceover on it, and it got to almost the end, and Bob goes, "Wait, that's not you, is it?" It got to like the end of a 10-minute video, and then Bob's like, "Oh, that's not you. That was awesome." That's how good it is. The process to get that video made and generate an almost 10-minute script was challenging in the 11 Labs product. I was doing basically paragraph by paragraph to generate the audio, and sometimes you need to regenerate some of the audio because it just had weird inflection or just a weird pronunciation. So it's not perfect all the time, but it gives you so much, and it gives a lot of great inflection. It gives a lot of a really, really good audio clone of someone. So you take that with the some of the challenges. So first off, I'm bearing the lead. I'm less excited about this. I'm excited for them that they've raised $80 million in a Series B to keep investing in this product, in the technology. But I'm really jumping to the story of why it matters. They didn't say, "Great news, we raised $80 million and we're going to build some more stuff." They said, "Great news, here's the stuff that we built, and it's now live for everybody that we've been beta testing. Oh, and we have $80 million to build more cool stuff like this." So the pain that I had trying to generate something that was more longer form, that wasn't just a sentence or two, they've now solved with what they call projects, which is a pretty generic term, and they've positioned it inside of their product as for audiobooks specifically. Killer use case, right? Take your audiobook your book that you've already written, any text, be able to import it, and really that long form, and then add voice to it. They show some really good examples of narrative where you have different characters and voices going back and forth. Just makes it super rich, audio drama level for some different type of narrative books. For people producing productivity books and business books, it lets them get in front of people like myself that I never buy the Kindle version of a book. I never read, but I listen to audiobooks like a fiend. So it opens up a whole set of people that would, and I know a lot of other founders and such that maybe 50% of the people I talk to, that they only do audiobooks. So that's a huge plus for people to be able to unlock. And the other thing that they released with that is the ability for a marketplace for people to be able to monetize their voice and their likeness. This is something we've talked about in a few different ways, and we have viewpoints on provenance and see that as being very important in a lot of places. So for 11 Labs to come out and proactively say, "Hey, you can have this ecosystem of voices to be able to use, and also they're being fairly paid for it. They set their own rates, and here's a way to interact and exchange that. I think is a really great next step. Is it going to be perfect? I don't know, but it didn't exist and now it does. So that's a lot further than we were 2 weeks ago.
It'd be perfect for when we're telepathing with our Neuralinks on our heads, and this notion of like being able to install a new designer voice next time I talk to Kevin.
Yeah, what do you want me to sound like? You want a Matthew McConaughey clone for the day?
Well,
I can be that for you.
I think you got a perfect voice as is. I think you should go to the marketplace and rise the charts and be the number one voice.
It's gonna be like Cameo, right? If a few popular people get a hold of this, it's there. Turn into Cameo for voices. Be like, yeah, you want. I was using Speechify the other day, another voice driven product. Yeah, I had to go through the setup because I added it on a new device. Like, oh, you want Gwyneth Paltrow? You want Mr. Beast? And that's their 3 featured voices in their premium app. Marketplace is going to let you do anything. Whoever wants to throw their voice on there and get paid, you can then throw in the product.
Mm-hmm.
If Morgan Freeman joins, it's game over. I mean, what's the point?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's actually true. The 11 Labs marketplace, I'm really curious to see how that's going. They said they already started paying out. Is that right? I think that's what I saw the last time.
I think so, yeah.
They're already actively redistributing. So that is great. It's very exciting.
I hope they ask for people who put voices on the marketplace, like where they're from. I have a suspicion that we here in Indiana are going to rank really, really low because of our Midwest accents.
No, I think you could get you get the opposite. You're like, where are you from? You get the you don't quite fit on the coasts. Not from down south. What is that?
Nicest place in the world.
Funny.
The Midwest.
Yeah, and I can't help but see like a lot of these applications being kids sitting in a virtual classroom and making their teachers sound like whatever makes them laugh.
Yep.
Or basically, so 90% of corporate meetings going like replace it with your evil villain if you don't like the manager. I don't know. I see a lot of fun use cases coming through.
Why are you screaming at me? Hold on one second. I'm going to go and turn up your politeness meter. Oh, that's better. Yeah.
Oh,
go ahead.
Yeah.
Going back to filtered realities, that's a real risk that we're introducing here. Like, I don't want to be yelled at and suddenly everybody's smiling. I remember there was a movie about that too, wasn't it? So you're basically just tuning your reality to what you like to see.
Yeah. The other ramification of this too, I think, is right in time as well. Because we're on the edge, we're having these conversations. It's maybe not obvious to a lot of people that are thinking about AI and automation and text-based and image generation. We've in the last several months, we've had a lot of conversations about synthetic video and audio. And as we have been implementing some of those different engagements and workflows, we start crossing over with conversations around, well, if this teammate does this voice here, we put them in this product, or if they're in this MVP of this and they'll do it because they're an employee. But how do you formalize that? Where does that scale? So now all of a sudden I've done that at a company and wait, they own my voice forever. Now I'm part of their product forever, or they can do what they want with it. So it's interesting that we've had a chance to work with a lot of companies in the entertainment space, and now we're crossing over to the same challenges that were a big part of the strikes just a couple months ago in the non-entertainment spaces. And I think this is hopefully it's a great solution to point to as the first like shining star of, hey, just go over there and do that, and it's going to broker it for you, and you're going to have all the right waivers. Ideally, that's probably some of the network effect that the 11 Labs gets from this, and then companies don't have to start thinking about what's our voice clone policy. We use 11 Labs and abide by their policy.
And they did it for me.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Speaking of this distorted realities and changing that, one of the big news elephant in the room here is, the announcement that Neuralink has apparently done its first human implant. What do you guys think about it?
Bob, are you on the wait list? Are you number 2?
I mean, I've already decided for myself, I am not going to be a Neuralink user, partly because I've built a lot of software in my life and shit goes wrong, right? And like my fear is like an action movie, like you're in it's literally the Matrix. You're in the Matrix, and all of a sudden like something goes wrong and you can't turn it off. Like you can't tell anybody it's going wonky. People are just looking at you from the outside, like, oh, he's just in the Neuralink, he's fine, he'll be there. He's usually in there for like, I don't know, 7 to 8 weeks at a time. Not on purpose. I'm trying to get out in 17 minutes, but I keep getting locked in there. I don't know. That's a part of my fear around it. And then the other side is more of just a funny reaction, is like Elon's post about it, something like human trials underway, initial neuron firing looks promising. It reminded me of like a random note that you would find in like a horror video game.
Trying to put together the clues of what happened, right? How did it all go wrong? And you're underground. It's BioShock. You're underwater. Like what happened? Where's the audio recordings here? Right? We have. Don't worry, we have his X posts to put the story together.
But in general, it's super exciting. I mean, I wouldn't be a tester. I'd want to be. I think with kids and stuff, it's past my time to be that explorer. But it's really exciting for people who need it. It's not about like 10xing the superhuman. I think it's about leveling up folks who have special needs and being able to operate in the world even more effectively, and again sort of bridge the chasm there. That's very exciting to me. I haven't thought about the answer to the question, like would I let my kids use it or not? I'm not sure yet.
I mean what's interesting, like what you're saying, and I think that's what they've been doing, right? They started first trying to find trial patients with severe spinal cord injuries, right? So we're not talking your everyday human. I mean, they haven't, as far as we know, they haven't shared a lot of information around who the actual trial participant was. But I assume it was, one of the more severe spinal cord injury cases where, like you said, it's really about restoring certain functionality, or even giving them the ability to do, to just do things more in their lives. And they also didn't share, just to get us a little bit wrapped out in where we think that they are actually at, right? They didn't share a lot about it, and we've seen a lot of discussions in the scientific community and hypotheses about where they actually at, right? Because they said they're getting neuron spikes, but what does it actually mean, right? They, like, people were hoping for like a full bandwidth, high rate of information, and they're currently using Bluetooth, right? How is the information actually transmitted? What are they getting, right? There's a lot of information that we don't know about where they are yet, which is, needless to say, it is still fascinating that they've made it to human trials, because that in and of itself is such a hard step to get to. But at this stage, we don't know where in that stage of the human trials they actually are, right? As them not sharing a lot of that information publicly yet.
Super early days, like you said, Calvin. Yeah, we're on the very earliest of people that need it and can get the most quality of life improvement from the technology. And there's a long list of people that need and deserve to be helped with that before I get turned into a superhuman with that, right? So I'm hopeful that helps a ton of people. I think about the early cameras that were neuro embedded, that had very low resolution for people that were sight impaired, and what those look like 20 and 30 years ago, and it was a few pixels, and it's like it was an improvement for the most part, my understanding, right, to have a 24 by 24 96 by 96 resolution of something, and sensing and direction and light, right? And then it gets better over time. We're at that. We're at can we get a few pixels going here at this stage? So I imagine a very long ways. If it's anything like any other typical clinical trial, we're another decade out before we even get to the part where we can say, okay, now we can start doing this at any amount of scale.
I was going to joke that
But
we
that's
probably
the interesting
see
part,
him on
right?
clearance at Christmas time this year.
Mm-hmm. Right, that's the thing, right? Like, going back to sort of the AI cases, though, is that going to significantly improve their speed of achieving that capability, right? Like, are we on the same decade-long trajectory to get to that point, or does this more, like Bob, like you said, does this more look like a year, right? Like, how much can be done? And I'm super keen to see more news coming in terms of how they're applying artificial intelligence to the problem of trying to make sense of all the neuron signals that they get. I mean, historically, Elon Musk has played this game very, very well. If you think about the introduction of Teslas, right, even way before they had autonomous functions, it was very, very smart to build out a network with, all cars having internet connectivity. Right. So you could, and then getting early into a learning program and basically creating one of the biggest learning mesh networks out on the road to test your scenarios and to improve your artificial intelligence capability. Now, looking at, drawing the bridge over to, well, how can this be applied to the Neuralink problems? And I see a lot of potential parallels. So and again, this is humans and brain implants that we're talking about, right? So the risk, I mean, cars have humans in them, but the risk is still a different one in terms of things go wrong. But I'm wondering if this could lend to a similar strategy, right, in terms of trying to test potential signal readings without actually affecting the brain yet, but just getting to a stage where you can start and make sense of the outputs. And that's where I'm really curious to see if they'll get to similar results quickly.
I think we're past the inflection point where clearly the pace of technology has outkicked the pace of policy, which was mostly flat. So I think the technology is able to accelerate way faster, right? Exponential curve of innovation, whereas our policy creation, although we will begin to use AI in governance, I'm sure, is still going to be subjugated to very slow, arduous consensus building. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a way to pump the brakes on some of the stuff before it gets let loose ahead of its time. But I don't think the tech is going to be the bottleneck on the Neuralink. I mean, how many times have we said this in the last year, or had a conversation with somebody where it's like, GPT-1, it's not very good. It's like, well, Moore's law, like wait a day, seriously, like a day. We're not waiting very long for iterations anymore. So I think just in general, being able to capture that data and just drive modeling off it. You've got the inputs and the outputs. You know what they're doing. Now we know what they're thinking. Build a model between those two things. That's table stakes, I think, in a lot of ways. Still difficult, but not a pipe dream anymore. I think the harder part is like, how do you release something like this into the world, right? This is, if you really think about it, it's probably the most profound thing that's ever been created by man, right? We were talking about the other podcast, like being able to understand whales and dolphins. That's pretty cool. That's like, it's not even in Jules Verne, like he didn't even think of this stuff. And here we are, like ready to have these as products. It's pretty insane.
Yeah,
the
turning science fiction into reality.
Absolutely. Yeah. The hypothetical that ML and AI leaders have been talking about since the 80s have been that once we get to artificial AGI to general artificial intelligence, runaway artificial intelligence, that assuming we get there at some point, the only way to keep pace with being able to communicate with it would be something like a Neuralink, to be able to communicate at that speed. If the AI can think in milliseconds, flip that around. If it feels like having a conversation with Bob takes 1 year for Bob to tell you one paragraph, you will stop paying attention to Bob, or you will not be able to do a lot of work with Bob compared to the amount that you could offer Bob, which replace Bob for humanity. And that is the potential of AI. I think, Calvin, I'm most excited about, to build on what Bob, you were saying, not policy specifically, definitely lots of area to improve there, but just change management, the behavioral change, the Overton window of acceptance, and finding what the general acceptance is, the seeking of the general acceptance, I would say would be an equally impactful thing to come out of the Neuralink process of what would it take to move a society forward in a way that we could accept this and find a path forward, generally accepting it, majority, feeling comfortable about whatever that solution is and the rules around it in 5 years or 5 years from now, right? That would be crazy. Any other societal change that we've seen and talked about in the last 100 years, we don't need to run down the list of very challenging things, especially in the US, has been absolutely more than a decade each. So to even say we could get there in 5 or 10 years by taking the learning, by powering that with AI, that's what it's going to take to get Neuralink to a broader place in the next decade, if that would happen, if it's ready. And if we had that ability, then man, let's point that at all policy, all governance, all social change that we're wrestling with would be super powerful.
I think we are us collectively are benevolent. We don't always think about what the bad guys will do with it, and that freaks me out a little bit. Like if it is what it is, which I think it is, there's going to be military applications of this before we even see products hit healthcare. We won't know about it, but that's interesting and terrifying. In terms of the applications of all this stuff, not just Neuralink, but in general, like who gets access first and what's their motive and how are they going to apply it to better the world? Bad guys usually think they are bettering the world. They think we're bad guys. They think they're good guys and vice versa. Like who is a bad guy? But I don't know.
Wait, what's wrong with kind of controlling 10 billion people and just having them rake the garden every day? Hold on, what am I missing?
Well, I mean, if
everyone, like 10 billion people walking like robots on the street and just doing their chores. 12 hours.
The puppet master is probably a lot of fun, but we'll probably be one of the 10 billion, unfortunately.
Maybe not. No.
It's just Elon with his army, and everybody uses X all the time. Like it goes back to number 1 on the App Store.
No. If Elon ever gets to the point, we're probably all very, very busy. It's the modern day pyramids. We're very busy colonizing Mars and going to the next planet. Basically, having the entire of humanity to the task of venturing out into space.
I mean, you say, Calvin, like raking the yards. Take it what if large groups of people could be upskilled and retrained in a matter of days / instantaneously, and now all of a sudden there's 10 million scientists that could perform experiments and assume resourcing and space for them. But I don't know, that's also that's the positive side of, okay, if you're plugging me into the matrix, give me the abilities or help me understand these tasks at the very least, even if I don't understand the what is happening in these chemical reactions. There's a lot of work to be done there that we don't have enough resources to point at.
And suddenly you're on like Neptunian 9 mining for ore. And you're like, where? Who? What? How did I get here?
Random thought, but like, haves and haves nots. Like this is really scary to think about. Like what if there's a lot of redundancy, maybe people losing jobs. Like what if the way you make money is you become the compute? I don't know. That's kind of a weird, interesting thought. Like
That's
pop a Neuralink on your head and you are an EC2 box, right? You're a server and we're going to harness your brain as a form of compute. It's not to make your life better, but to make our infrastructure go faster so we can do lots of AI at scale.
That's you gotta ask the Kowalski brothers when they started Matrix.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Instead of in the weird pod with the thing stuck on your back, it's a comfortable pod with the thing stuck on top of your head. But basically the same story.
Well, until then, we hope that we'll find good uses, as we touched on some of them today, such as how do we solve, things for pancreatic cancer and a couple of other things. I think I tend to believe, like we do, what we're trying to do is at least stay on the positive side of the impact spectrum, right? And do the best we can to make AI more impactful. And I think at this, we're sort of approaching the end of the hour, and the end of our podcast here. Maybe just for our listeners, a thought to close us out. If you're curious to find more daily AI news, what keeps our minds busy at day and night, then feel free to head over to mesh.io and subscribe to our daily newsletter, which you will find, like I said, as a daily digest in your inbox every day. And other than that, that was the What If You Could show today. And thank you very much for listening and tuning in.
Thank you, guys.
And up until next time.
Thanks, y'all.